to you, please.
I'm very interested to see where that bird sound is coming from. Actually, someone's calling in from a very exotic place. Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Gosh, these 2 weeks seem to fly past, don't they? Before you know it, we've got the next InterManager meeting. I think as Kuba has reported, we've been relatively successful in attracting some really key new members. We have now Synergy, OSM, and Fleet who have come on board. I'm having very good discussions with Tome. If I say I'm 95% certain they'll come on board, I'm probably overstressing it. But I think within the next week we'll have Tome. And Marlow also have given me assurance that it's just a matter of time and they'll come on board too. So we're getting some key players on board for the message that we're delivering and the objective that we're trying to deliver, and I think that's really important too. It's one thing getting these people on board and promising that we're perhaps going to change our approach or be more proactive. It's another thing doing that. So that's step one is happening. Step two is we've got to get that process, that industry standard underway. I'm also discussing with a number of oil majors and a number of key vessel operators with in-house management, one of them being Frontline, about joining too, and they're also very keen to join. So I think Frontline will join. I think we'll have their approval next week as well, which will be key. I think to have a really tough client like Frontline, and they are a tough client, they're a good tough client, will really add some great ideas to our brainstorming sessions about our industry standard and what we want from the industry standard. I have to say too, I've been immensely disappointed by some of the discussions I've had with some of the companies that one would imagine would be much more pro and interactive and supportive of our industry, which actually persuades me even more for the need for the industry standard and to raise our industry to the heights that it should be. I mean, some of the comments have been incredibly disappointing and self-interested as opposed to interested for the benefits of our sector as a whole. So good news on overall in attracting new membership. A lot to do now, and Kuba will talk about that and how he's going to get the committee started on the industry standard. I think there's been some good cooperation too already happening on GDPR, etc., and cooperation between the membership. I would ask you all though now. I mean, I can go for some of the larger of the ship managers and associate members. There's a number of associate members who will be join or coming forward to join as well. But please, each and every one of you, we're all part of this effort. Let's all reach out to potential full members and associate members and increase this membership. This organization will thrive if it has a thriving, very diverse membership, in my view, and not just thrive economically, but thrive from an ideas perspective and an experience perspective and an association perspective. So please, all of you, go out there and recruit. I think that's the name of the game, so that we have a really enthusiastic, thriving association. Kuba.
Yes, thank you. And moving on, an interesting part here is that indeed those new members joining, and they are on a call today as well. We welcome them. Moving on GDPR and committee, I haven't seen anything well, I have seen when the committee started. I am not seeing much news from them, but that's probably good news. No news there means that they have started, they are starting to work. This last 2 weeks, I was extremely busy because you wanted me to be extremely busy with Philippines. So I went, hold on, I need to let people in as well when I'm talking. How to do that, Kuba? Talk and, okay, somebody's helping me. Ral, thanks. Okay, so Philippines, the message, we received message from 3 or 4 members, very concerned about the situation in Philippines on many layers. on vaccination, on harbors, on letting people in and out, on letting Filipinos in and out, and so on and so forth. I went out, you gave me very good 7 questions, basically, which I have submitted this morning to Philippines, asking whether they will be able to answer them. I have been in touch with the Commission, European Commission as well, because there was a question regarding EMSA audit. And now I am firmly on a path to organize a meeting in 2 weeks' time. So next meeting would be dedicated to the Philippines. Now, I will keep you posted because it might be too short for some of the government officials to be ready in 2 weeks' time. Therefore, I will ask you then to give me a 3 weeks, if not 2 weeks. Although my plan A is 2 weeks' time meeting, and it will be as early as possible to accommodate the time difference. So we may need to meet at the very unusual hour for our American colleagues, because it will be 9 UK time, which would be 1600 Philippines time. So that's on the Philippines. Moving on is meeting with IMO Secretary General. It is now confirmed on the 13th of April, and Mark and myself will be representing. We have submitted agenda because with IMO you have to submit agenda well in advance, but I would say it's a fluid agenda, because if you submit in shipping industry, especially now 3 weeks in advance, you bet it will change. So we keep it that way, then we know the major points we want to discuss, but those goals are moving as well. On this subject with IMO, I had a meeting on Monday, with IMO and other NGOs, ICS mainly, ICS and others, Intertanko, discussing the issue which we have asked IMO to act on our behalf, on the industry behalf. And as a result, IMO said, fine, we will be fighting your corner, no problem, but we need ammunition from you. So you probably saw my message asking you for the flights numbers. Where do you fly your people to? And so on and so forth. And thank you so much. I was overwhelmed. I received a lot of information from you guys, which I'm now collecting and collating. And tonight I will be sending it over to Fred from IMO, because that is the ammunition he needs. He was very pleased with our first response, especially Joe on this call. Joe, thank you. Your help was absolutely fabulous. And IMO could score a lot of brownie points with WHO because they really overwhelmed them with response. And that's good. That's what we need. I think that's all from me. One thing, Mark, I wanted to point out, after our last meeting, few members came to me, and on the drive for more members, they were very keen to see more commercial operators, if not becoming a member, although it would be a plan A, to see more interactions between us, third-party ship managers, and commercial operators. So I have taken it on board, and I believe we need to organize, if not a meeting, well, if not to get them on board and get them always on our meetings, so maybe after Philippines to organize a meeting when we can actually get commercial operators to meet with us and see that. Over to you.
That's thanks, Kuba. That's why I asked Frontline. Frontline have goodness, I think 13 managers who service their fleet, as well as having an in-house manager. They're probably one of all demanding clients are excellent clients. They're probably one of our most demanding clients, and their standards are right up there, which is why they were very keen to listen, and they'll be taking a decision during the course of next week. And I'm pretty certain they will join. If they join, they will not only send a very clear message to those naysayers who are holding back cynically or otherwise from joining, but they'll also have a really positive influence on some of the debate, where they will see things both from a client perspective and also as a manager themselves, as an in-house manager. So really important. I think that's massively important, and I think there has to be a test insofar as, do they manage their own vessels as well, because they shouldn't just be third-party managers. It should be, I think, for all managers and associate members. But no, I think we should do that. I think Frontline was a good start point, just to sort of test the appetite, and it would. On your initial opening comments, Kuba, where are we and perhaps perhaps you and I, if we haven't yet done that, could touch base after this on this standards committee. We need to get started. You know, I've committed to those of the good new joiners. You know, I have committed that we would do this. That is one of the key requirements as far as improving the standards of the industry. That's one of the key reasons they've joined. So we need to really demonstrate to all of us that we mean business. And you know, I think we talked about getting this done by the end of June or the end of July. I think we should do that. And you and I think need to get our heads together and give a little bit more guidance, perhaps, on how we're doing that.
Yeah, I've got some draft skeleton ready,
yes,
which I think I need to go through you, and then maybe executive
maybe
committee.
We can do that over Easter and then float it to XCOM and then yeah, I think the guidance is really important, isn't it? Otherwise we'll waste a lot of time running around maybe. And certainly some of the comments that I've heard from the new joiners will be very useful, because that's what this is what the expectation is. But yeah, great.
Indeed. Okay, thank you. I'll pause for a second now, seeing whether I've got any yellow hands. Anybody would like to comment on what we have been discussing for the last 11 minutes? If not, then I would like to open the floor. We've got our guest speaker, or maybe guest answerer today, Natalie. Natalie, could you switch your camera on so we can welcome you and see you actually?
Hi guys.
Hello. I think there is no need to introduce. Everybody knows Natalie. Natalie, the floor is yours. Please do the opening salvo for us, ship managers here. We are talking vaccination, we are talking testing, crew changes, obviously. And I do have a set of questions should the floor be quiet. But otherwise, please go ahead.
Okay, well, first of all, I've omitted to wear my flak jacket today, although I suspect that I may need to put it on at some point during this call, from the basis of some of the concerns that Cuba perhaps has expressed on his members' behalf. So I'll start by saying I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. In the same way that there's a lot of anti-vax stuff, there's also a lot of misinformation in the public domain. And the aim of this afternoon is to try to tell you what is and what is not factually correct as to what you may be hearing. And the first thing I just want to point out, and I noticed Phil Belcher is also on a call, and he's also equally involved as I am on the task force that Cuba sits on. So you know, Phil can, I'm sure, interject where necessary as well. The first thing I would say is very early on, probably about last December time, it became clear that we were starting to move to a situation where vaccinations were likely to be able to be available in the new year. And we agreed at that point that we would start work and we would establish a vaccination task force for the industry. And InterManager became part of that task force, as did Intertanko, Intercargo, IMCA, and a number of different bodies that we spoke to. And the first thing that we did when we started really working properly this year was to really try to understand what the key questions, the key issues were potentially with regard to vaccination of seafarers. Now, I think there's two main distinctions that I'm sure you'll all appreciate. First of all, seafarers who are currently in their home countries, and secondly, seafarers who are currently on board vessels. And there's two distinctions there because the approach to vaccination for both of those will obviously need to be different. The last thing that we wanted as an industry sector was to have a repeat of last March, April time, May time, when we had crew changes came to more or less a standstill because seafarers couldn't move around the world. And we were very mindful that if airlines and stuff started to insist people were vaccinated and seafarers couldn't get hold of the vaccines, there would be problems. So we were being told at that point that port states weren't interested in trying to look after the needs of seafarers who weren't from their own countries, because the priority for vaccinations had to go to nationals first. So we said, well, this is going to potentially cause us a problem, as I'm sure you'll appreciate, because how will seafarers be able to get home? That could then impact on world trade, etc. So we started really identifying a core list of things that we needed to do, if you like, a roadmap for the task force of all the different things that we needed to, we thought we needed to have in place, and did quite a bit of brainstorming. And I think, Phil, you'll probably agree with me, I think originally we had something like 26 or 27 different things on that list that we wanted to do and we wanted to get information on. And some of those, I would say, were a lot initially was about information gathering, understanding the situation globally, understanding what resources were available, understanding the status of where vaccinations were, understanding the stance of WHO in regard to vaccinations, which were legitimate and which were not, and so on and so forth. We then decided that we felt it would be important, obviously, to update the medical guidance document that was produced initially, I think, in about March 2020, which has subsequently had 3 versions to go on board the vessels, to version 4, which would also take into account vaccinations. We also agreed that that document was really more of a management tool for use on board vessels for people who would be actually responsible for people who have COVID. But there was a real need, or perceived need, that seafarers also needed to be encouraged to get the vaccine. And I stress the word encouraged because we cannot mandate seafarers to get the vaccine, and I'll come on to that in a minute. We had a long discussion about the human rights aspects as well. So we also then started to I think the question was raised that perhaps we should produce a document with regard to the legal and liability issues relating to vaccination. And so some work was initially done by a small core group, which was then sent around to other organisations to perfect the straw man, and then has subsequently been issued, I think, last week or the week before. Together with the COVID vaccinations leaflet for seafarers, we also thought it was necessary to promote the vaccinations leaflet in a way that could be acceptable to seafarers, rather than acceptable, accessible to seafarers is perhaps a better way. And so we worked with a video company to produce a 2-minute social media blurb, if you like, in conjunction with our partners, to go out so that seafarers could actually be encouraged to look at the leaflet and to download it if they wanted to. So that's all things that have happened to date. Now, what are the key things that I think will be of concern to you? We're still working on a roadmap in terms of actually setting up vaccination centres, and we hope to have that ready in the next sort of 2 or 3 weeks. Substantial work's been done on that. But I'll come on to how the practicalities of what we're looking at in terms of that work a bit later. We're also going to be updating the protocols which went to the IMO at the initial start of the crew change crisis, which have been promulgated and accepted by MSC, to also factor in the stages in relation to vaccination. And that work is currently underway as well. It won't be huge changes, but it will just make sure that the vaccination steps are also included in that process, so that all authorities understand where it all fits together. Last week, I'm pleased to announce that we finally got the UN agencies, including ICAO, to actually put out a joint statement regarding access to vaccines being given priority to seafarers and aircraft crew. And I think that in itself is something that was absolutely needed in order to try to get states to recognise that we are different, seafarers are different to any other groups, and that they should be treated in a different way. And if we didn't get that, the impact that would have on world trade. So that one I think was launched on Friday. Kuba, I hope you've been able to share that with your membership. Okay. Now, some of the questions that have come up or appear to come up. And I'll put this into the way I've heard it being said, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. This is Natalie's interpretation here. Joe Blogg's shipping company have said that they're able to access vaccines and are already starting to vaccinate their crews. Why can't we? Or why are we being told vaccines are not available? Well, there may be two reasons for that. And I'll start. The first one is no company itself can purchase vaccines. We have checked that out. We have been told quite clearly by the UN that that is not possible. However, some countries, such as in the Philippines, are exploring doing public-private partnerships where if a company works with the government, they can buy 2 vaccines, one of which will go to the national pool and one of which can be used by the company. However, that's not available to everybody, and it's a very small minority of companies that I understand the Philippines government has even been willing to engage with for that discussion. That's also not in line with the global advice being given by WHO. So this is a national scheme in the Philippines for a small number of people. Now, what we don't know either is the vaccines that they're proposing as to whether or not they will be on the WHO emergency listing as approved vaccines. Now, for the reasons that we've stated in the vaccination liabilities document, we as ICS and also the partners who discussed this were all quite nervous about seafarers receiving, quote, vaccinations of sugar water, or vaccines which weren't actually properly tested and properly verified. We have some degree of assurance from a legal perspective if shipping companies are making sure seafarers are vaccinated with vaccines which at least have been identified and verified as okay on the WHO emergency listing. And that is constantly changing. If you look at it on a day-to-day basis, that the vaccines that may not have been acceptable 2 or 3 weeks ago, some are now on that list. But that is the criteria that we've used to try to make sure that there is some degree of efficacy. The other thing I would say is there are a lot of charlatans out there. We've known it before when we've had situations of seafarers saying that they've got certificates to be able to work on board to say that they were tested. I'm sure we all know that, and then they get into Singapore, and guess what? The tests weren't worth, they tested positive for COVID, and it transpired that they bought the certificate for themselves in Luna Park or something like that, and it wasn't from a legitimately registered doctor. So we have the same concerns about vaccinations, and the only way that we can try to ensure that it's done is that the vaccinations are administered through state authorised schemes with legitimately verified doctors. Phil, if I missed anything up to this point.
Hi, Natalie, and hi all, and thanks, Kuba, for letting us come in on this. No, I think this is a good overall idea, and given the groundwork for what we've been up against, and about the pressure of it. I mean, this is what also generated, and it was Kuba's idea about putting out that note, which looked at the vaccines and issues related to seafarers as well, that we got the industry to put together. And Kuba has certainly been keeping us all honest in this work as well, keeping us on track for that and making sure that we don't forget the seafarer at any point. Thanks.
Okay, so those are sort of the key things that we've currently been looking at. I can't say that whether or not Joe Blogg's company or whatever it is have got hold of vaccines legitimately or not legitimately, but the advice that we've clearly been given is that no company can get hold of it. It needs to be handled through an agreement with the state authority. Maybe that the state authority will have granted a legitimate permit to a specific private enterprise to be able to administer the vaccines on their behalf, but shipping companies themselves currently can't get that. Now, here's when the next thing comes in. Because of this, we've been very concerned about point number 2 that I raised before, i.e. seafarers being able to vaccinate, to get vaccinations in ports when they want to return home. Because if they can't get them in there, if they can't get to their labour supply country to get vaccinated, how are they going to get vaccinated? And for this reason, we've been pushing for an industry-wide allocation of vaccines, hopefully linked to the COVAX programme or a separate programme authorised by WHO, so that we as an industry sector can actually access vaccines to purchase on behalf of the industry and to disseminate through approved vaccination centres in ports. And this is a protocol we're working on at the moment. IMO and ILO and WHO are all involved in that discussion at the moment. They've also approached the COVAX programme, and it's currently being looked at. I can't give you any definitive answers as to whether we're going to be able to get it or not, but that's what we're aiming for. And the idea also being that obviously the industry would need to pay for that, but they would have to come through approved sources in a certain number of hub ports. So that's work that's underway. And because of the sensitive nature of this, I would ask that information stays within this group and does not get repeated outside of here. Kuba, I hope I've got your members' confidence for that, please. So I think I'll now open it to questions from any of you, but hopefully that at least gives you a little bit of a background, and hopefully you'll go a bit easier on Kuba and in the future and just take it out on me where necessary. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm waiting for the hands up electronically because we've got 40 people on a call, so I'll rather have, I can only see 6 people here. Any hands up? And while we are waiting for the hands up, Natalie, there is always a pending question. We already know that we've got the Philippines and there is this procedure. Obviously, everybody would like to be these few companies which would be able to. So maybe we need to reassure our members now here that this is what we are monitoring all the time, making sure that IMEC, ITF are all on the call as well with us. And whenever there is anything more to be reported, we will report. Would you like to add anything to that? And then Mark O'Neill will have a question.
Well, certainly. And I mean, this is something which has been done locally in the Philippines. As I understand it, 2 main companies, one of which I know happens to be one of your members, were approached to be part of these schemes. I think the 2 main companies that I'm talking about were approached directly through the Philippines government and Department of Health, and this was not open to others. Therefore, what I would suggest you do, Kuba, is liaise with that particular company, and I'm sure you know who I'm referring to make that point, because at the end of the day, we have no control over that. That was a decision which was taken, whether it be right or be wrong, by the Department of Health. But absolutely, the reason why we now want to be able to get access in hub ports or in other places to get seafarers vaccines through other means is because we are concerned about this approach of a public-private partnership and want to try to make sure we can get hold of some vaccines for the others who aren't part of that scheme. So that's what we're working from. And that doesn't just apply to the Philippines, that applies to seafarers from Pacific Island states. I see Dirk Free on the call. As you probably know, there's been big problems with Pacific Island states, German seafarers who've been stuck in Hamburg for over a year because they couldn't get home because Pacific Island states were declared COVID-free and they thought seafarers would be vectors for COVID. So there's going to be a problem getting vaccines for Pacific Island states. There's going to be problems to get vaccines for seafarers from Myanmar and from Indonesia. You name it, there's going to be problems in the coming year. And our point is to try to get equity so that where possible, we can try to get a fair distribution across countries. Mark, I see you.
Mark.
Yes, it's I'm on. I've got my speaker on loud. Thanks very much, Natalie. I mean, I listen to everything that you say, and that Kuba's. I read everything that Kuba's disseminated. I think the issue is, and I sort of predicted this a few months ago, that the whole vaccination issue would become extremely febrile. I mean, we're seeing this if you look at the EU versus UK. politics, and not just limited to EU, UK, but also US, Russia, etc. It's becoming a political pawn, and that's going to extend into the commercial world for sure. I think we've got to be very careful what we talk about legitimate and illegitimate obtaining of vaccines. Of course, all vaccines, you know, we Colombia, I know, wouldn't dream of obtaining vaccines for our seafarers in anything but a legitimate way. But the practice, let's be very open with you. I've not talked to a single CEO of a management company that hasn't taken steps to secure commercially through government organizations large quantities of vaccines. It's a fact, and
that's fine, and that's
yes,
perfectly okay if it's through a government approved scheme.
but just to but I think some members listening to what yourself and Philip were saying was that there was some sort of we should do this centrally and as one, and otherwise it's potentially not legitimate. It is legitimate. I just want to clear that up.
Yeah, no, Mark, we're not saying that. What we're saying is that there are situations where some seafarers will never be able to get it nationally and where access will not be possible. And this is why we're trying to do this for those particular seafarers from those countries. And the Philippines is a very good example, because when you actually analyse the number of vaccines which are available from the public-private partnership so far, and I use the word so far, it would equate to 1 in 100 seafarers who'd actually be able to get them, because the vaccine ratio is 1 to 50 and it's a 2-dose vaccine. Yes. So it would be 1 in 100. So what do you do for the other 99? And we're trying to look at trying to support the other 99.
I will say that the cost of those vaccines is significant, because I think probably they're priced on the basis that you discussed. You buy one, you pay for a few more for the national. But my understanding is that such schemes are available in Philippines and in Russia and in Dubai.
Well, let me come on to Russia and Dubai as a separate entity, if I may. Okay. Currently in Russia, the vaccine being offered, not surprisingly, is Sputnik, and also in China, I think they're obviously offering the Chinese-owned vaccines, none of which yet are on the WHO approved list, because they're still considered to be some questions about them. Now, that's not me saying that. That's WHO. And I sincerely hope that in the near term, WHO do approve some of those vaccines. But I go back to the point I made earlier. In order for legal liability and for ship owners to be sure that they're covered, we are currently can only advocate for use of vaccines which have had the efficacy approved by WHO at this stage on the interim list.
Yes.
So, for example, I know of a ship management company that put out promotion material. It wasn't yours, Mark, by the way, in, I think, Lloyd's List and a number of the other trade press, trade winds in particular, citing how they were able to get their seafarers vaccinated from Romania, and then they were getting them all, by bulk buying. They could have only been bulk buying the Sputnik vaccine. Now, the problem with doing that also is that you may get into situations where, if vaccines are used that are not on the WHO approved list, some countries may choose not to accept seafarers who've had those vaccines and not ones which are on the WHO approved list. And that is something that's currently being discussed in fora that I participate in from WHO, not specifically related to seafarers, but as general common practice. So for the same example that I think the German government now is questioning whether people under 60 should be being given the AstraZeneca vaccine. That's my understanding of what Angela Merkel said yesterday. It may be that some governments say, actually, we're not prepared to accept seafarers who've been vaccinated with Sputnik or a Chinese vaccine because we're not convinced of its efficacy. And then we may be in a situation where we've got seafarers who we think have been vaccinated, but actually haven't been because they've been vaccinated with one which is not on a WHO approved list. That is all beyond all of our control. So all we can try to do is steer people in a direction that we think is less likely to cause a problem. And that's what we're trying to do.
But if the basic proposition is that we would, of course, only vaccinate our seafarers through legitimate sources that I understand are available in Philippines, Russia, Croatia, Dubai, I think the list is longer, and that as I said, that those vaccines that are being sold there are approved, then my only fear is that as an association we should be perhaps realizing the inevitable, that we can shout and scream all we like that seafarers are key workers. The reality is that commercial interests will ultimately come to play, and we need to secure vaccines, commercially or otherwise, for our seafarers. And you know, I put it out there.
That's exactly what we're trying to do, Mark. That is exactly what we're trying to do by this industry initiative, where we're trying to actually get approved vaccines. But unfortunately, at the moment, we need to get the COVAX committee to be able to authorise that, so that they can then get the drug companies to sell them to us directly as an industry sector. So that is exactly what we're working on.
Okay.
So Natalie, maybe at this stage we need to talk a bit more about COVAX and what IMO has done. Are you able to do that, or shall I do that? And the other option here,
yes, Kuba. I mean, I think you can certainly explain what's happened today, but there is no final decision yet. So I think it's just with that caveat as to what's happened, and again with an understanding that we're in Chatham House rules here.
That's right. So the issue here is those on this call and the other NGOs were really twisting IMO arm, saying you need to act on our behalf. And I have to really appreciate the fact that IMO is very quick in listening to us. We do work very closely with IMO. They went on our behalf, I mean our shipping industry behalf, and talked to UN, talked to the WHO, and did secure some positions. They are not at the position now to tell us that, yes, in July you will have a vaccination because you are shipping industry and so on and so forth. But the discussions are ongoing, and they came to us on Monday, IMO reported back to NGOs and said, look, guys, first tier of discussions took place. We are now in a second, and we need some more from you. And one of those things was what I was talking about. How many seafarers are flying? Where do they fly? Nationality-wise, a lot of people IMO is talking to have completely skewed idea about shipping. They see shipping as a cruise ships. We had to tell them there is only 600 ships, cruise ships, and it's not where the cruise ships are going. It's 120,000 ships where we are talking about. So now, today, we promised them, well, tomorrow, we will provide this information which you are giving me. So next week, after Easter, IMO representative will go on our behalf and talk further with those which could actually make a difference. We also have approached Johnson & Johnson, checking whether because that would be a choice for shipping industry, one-shot vaccination, and whenever any other one-shot vaccination appears. So we spoke with Johnson & Johnson, and Johnson & Johnson said, guys, we can't really talk to you, but we can talk to IMO, we can talk to UN. So this is how we are going through to UN, through IMO, and applying for that. And COVAX, again, seems to be the best option. Now, Natalie, I would like you to talk about the passport, vaccination passport, because a lot of people are thinking, okay, we will go through the stage when we've got the vaccination. Our Russian, Ukrainian, Romanians are vaccinated now. How can we actually start traveling them? Could you please?
Yes, in fact, Kuba, in order to join your august gathering this afternoon, I've actually just left a meeting of the WHO Vaccination Smart certificate group, which is working on trying to see if
we're much more important, Natalie.
They are, or you are?
We are.
Oh, okay. So I don't know what the outcome is for later, but in essence, what they are talking about is trying to see how we can move to a common certificate similar to the yellow card, vaccination card, that you'll be familiar for yellow fever. Now, what apparently is being said is that WHO cannot mandate states to have exactly the same vaccination certificate. Why they can't do this is beyond me, but states have the sovereignty to choose how they want to do their vaccination certificates. So that in itself will mean that you're not going to see an identical certificate from every place. However, what they can do is recommend common fields and data fields such that you can get an interoperable document. So I know Kuba's worked on some elements of this and I've worked on other elements. What they are doing is trying to look at common data fields so that a database can be set up and they can actually have an electronically a smart vaccination certificate to try to avoid fraud. That's currently underway. I have to tell you, working with WHO is like pulling teeth. And if you think the IMO is slow, then multiply that by 15 and you'll come up with the speed of the WHO. And I say that because that is beyond our control. I see Claude smiling, but I mean, that's the reality of it. I'm still waiting for them to come back with some solutions with regarding to SARS from 16 years ago. That's still apparently in progress. So being slightly flippant, obviously there is work going on, but I don't see those smart vaccination certificates coming in the next few months. However, I'm also aware that the European Union has now started to produce what they call the green vaccination certificate, that they hope to be available, I think, from June. And I say hope to be available, there isn't a final definition of a date, and that will be a common certificate which should apply across all EU member states. So that's a starting point. I also think that they're working in close collaboration with other developed countries. So we will start to get, I think, things moving, and I think they will be the ones who will push WHO to then transfer what they've produced into an electronic document. But any other questions on that I can help with?
No, I don't see any, but oh, okay, somebody has put him. Yeah, Rajesh, please go ahead.
Cuba, good afternoon, everyone. Natalie, thanks for joining in. I just wanted to, among all the stakeholders, I think ITF is very key piece of part here, because they are nothing but the spokesperson on behalf of all the crew. The last year, they had a very irresponsible statement of enough is enough. They came out with that, and we had people started jumping, stop working after 4 months on board the ship, because the statement said if your contract is up, you can stop work and do whatever it takes to divert the ships or whatever to get people off. So I think while we are in the middle of formalizing a strategy or getting to know the practicalities of where everybody lies, I think ITF being this spokesperson because ITF gives the teeth to the seafarers to behave in a certain way, that the ITF is very much into the practicalities of that it's difficult to source vaccination. It's you have to only use the one which is WHO. There are legal implications for the ship owners and the ship managers that they do not send out any communication unless it has been courteously reviewed by ICS, InterManager, and so on. So that's the kind of collaboration
Okay.
We are looking at.
In answer to that, and then Kuba, I see you've got your hand up as well. I can assure you that in all of this work, we've involved ITF right from up front, for the vaccine leaflet we produced, the video we produced for seafarers, the vaccination protocols working roadmap that we're producing. All of these things have been endorsed. And I'd also say that the work to actually get the WHO and the IMO and the COVAX programme together, in fairness, has been jointly driven by Guy Platten and Stephen Cotton. They have been doing that jointly together. Yes, I think that the enough is enough statement was irresponsible and didn't help initially. But look what ultimately happened. The seafarers themselves, union, realised that they were backing themselves into a hole that they couldn't get out of. And I think, in fairness, my experience has been, and Paddy will tell you, now he knew me when I had blonde hair. Now I've got grey hair. About 20 years ago, things with ITF, I think, have substantially improved over the last year compared to what I dread to think what the situation would have been 20 years ago had we faced this. And compared to the situation we had even with the piracy and the work we tried to do on humanitarian relief and piracy, the collaboration, I don't think, has been greater. We can't be complacent on that. We can't just turn around and say, everything's hunky-dory and we're all best friends, because we know we are. We have different standpoints, but I think we are trying to work wherever possible with ITF to get the message as effectively as we can to the seafarers. Kuba, you probably disagree with me.
No. Actually, I back you up 100%, because on Monday, Guy and Steve Cotton and myself and we met, and we did manage to stop ITF from issuing another press release, and Steve was very good with that. He understood that this doesn't make sense. And what happened it's more now, 4 weeks ago. Remember, guys, then there are different layers of organizations, and we do have a Dave is the guy in ITF we are talking to, and I went back to him after Rajesh, you pointed out to us that this was very damaging, and I had an apology from ITF saying, yes, we have cocked up, to be honest. We didn't really internally discuss it fully, and he was really upset. Then it went ahead, okay? But he said, calm your members down. It's not going to happen again, I promise, because it's not helping those who are on the shopping floor in ITF as well. So, Mark is pushing me very hard to organize a meeting with Steve Cotton, get him in front of you, and I don't know, give him a hard time or give him a nice time, but to explain that ship managers are in a very difficult position where if anybody, Intertanko, Intercargo, InterManager, or ITF goes ahead as a loose cannon and issues something like that, because it's scoring points. It's not helping anybody, and we should avoid that. So we are meeting. Philip and Natalie, we see each other 3 times a week and discussing in different forums and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of interaction. And if there is anything, obviously we are arguing sometimes, big style, but the agreement is we try to persuade each other. And if we can't, we then go back and try again and again and again. And that's the role of everybody. So ITF was a bit off, I would say, and I think we all learned a lesson. We gave them a hard time for doing that, and hopefully you haven't seen anything like that anymore. That would be my answer. So here we go.
No, can I just add that, if any of you do experience anything which you think is untoward, please mention it to Kuba or myself, and we can try and take it up discreetly with the people that we speak with, because sometimes we have access to people who are not the people who are acting irresponsibly, who can then put them back in their place. So that would be my recommendation to you in that situation.
Definitely. Okay, waiting for more hands up. We still have 5 minutes, I would say, if you've got anything. If not, then Natalie, I would like you to touch on key worker status, because, forgive my French, there is a lot of bullshit going on. A lot of countries are saying, yeah, we've got this keyword, but it doesn't translate to anything. UK being one of those countries, for example, when they say one thing and Scotland then goes completely different way. Poland, to put the balance, is the same country. And then you've got, all sorts of issues when European Commission would say, we highly recommend, but then the other countries are not following the high recommendations. Give us your view, how we as NGOs were working on it.
Okay, I'll give you my view, and then Phil, I'm sure, can interject afterwards, if anything else. But first and foremost, there was an idea initially, and this wasn't actually so much to do with vaccinations. This was just generally to try to get states to actually start to be a bit more responsible towards seafarers, based on the crew change challenges that we had last year. I know a number of the companies here probably experienced problems where some of the requirements under the MLC or under the international health regulations or under SOLAS were not being properly fulfilled. And we believed it was necessary to remind states of their responsibilities on this. And the UK government, you'll recall, then said, well, we'll try and host a conference whereby we can try to draw attention to some of the things, because we'd had a number of deaths on board of people who didn't necessarily have COVID, but who couldn't get medical access in ports. We had seafarers who were stuck, who couldn't get home, all sorts of hundreds of different things. And we wanted to start to get countries to take their obligations under the international convention seriously. And one of the things that came out of that conference, which was chaired by Grant Shapps, who is the UK Minister of Transport, in conjunction with a number of other countries, was that there would be this opportunity for countries to declare that they considered seafarers to be key workers. What was never discussed at the time as to, well, what's that definition actually mean? Yeah, so they came up with this wonderful term that seafarers, that countries say, yes, we support and we think that seafarers are key workers. I think that's a big problem with the vaccinations, because the allocation of vaccinations is not something that is in the purview of the Ministries of Transport. That's in the purview of the Ministers of Health and other people within the countries who make those sorts of decisions. And so, to me, one is aspirational. To say seafarers are key workers is aspirational and aims to help, but it isn't a commitment to help, and it's certainly not a commitment to help in every regard. And that's a challenge we've got. We've even got discussions now going on. Are seafarers considered to be essential workers? Essential workers has a different criteria to key workers. The ILO say that seafarers cannot be called essential workers because that then brings them into a same category as, say, nurses or people who are in the front line. Now, I'm not saying that's right, but we're getting into all those sorts of international bureaucratic discussions in terms of the semantics of what these terms mean. To me, the important thing that we've got to do is forget the rhetoric of whether a country has said seafarers are key workers and say all seafarers are travel internationally. They're a special category of people and they need to access vaccines quickly, efficaciously and responsibly. That to me is more important than this term's key workers. But Phil, did you want to contradict or add anything?
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. I mean, one of the big points there is that most of the vaccination decisions lie with the health ministries, and shipping is unfortunately regarded as being a small and fairly insignificant industry in most countries. So they don't see the need. I mean, the Suez Canal debacle we've had in the last week or so has at least highlighted the role that shipping is important. So, you know, as Natalie is saying, as Kuba is saying, our main effort has been in addressing the countries, talking to them, making sure they understand that shipping and seafarers are necessary, it's essential, and it has to be done. And without that transport network, then their trade, their goods, their PPE, their hospitals don't get lights, etc. All those kind of things that we all know absolutely really well. But it's about getting that across, and particularly in countries where, you know, for them, they see seafarers as being the vector of the illness, vector of the disease, the plague ships coming in. We still hear these kind of comments around. And it is hitting a brick wall sometimes, but the little successes we are getting after enormous amounts of effort from people have resulted in, you know, the statement like the 5 heads of those UN bodies actually coming out there. That was an incredible achievement to get that across there. And Kuba, I'm really sorry, I've got to jump off for an internal meeting now. So thanks very much and good luck. Jess.
Brilliant. Thanks, Philip. Thanks for joining us. Okay, indeed, I've got a reminder here. Then we've got last 5 minutes, and as you know, in 5 minutes, guillotine comes down. So your last chance to ask questions now or share your thoughts, please. I don't see any yellow hands in front of me. Guys, you wanted this meeting. You promised to shred Natalie. You said that when she comes, you'll give her a hard time. Don't shy away now. That's your chance. Look, Natalie, everybody's so polite now. So kind. Very good. Very good. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. And please, you know, if things are bothering you and bugging you and you want to get the straight talking answer, please feel free to come to me via Kuba. I don't mince my words. I say things as Dirk knows, as Paddy knows, as it is. And I'm always very happy to do that. Thank you very much.
And just to reinforce that, Natalie is my contact when it comes to abandonment of ships, well-being of seafarers. I get in touch with ICS immediately. And obviously, I don't necessarily advertise that because it's a very sensitive issue. And those of you who have been in a situation when you really needed help and assistance with ITF as well, we really have a very good working relationship with ITF included, up to the point that 2 o'clock in the morning, American time, I could call someone to get our Ukrainian second engineer through Coast Guard, through everything, and it was a success story. And it wouldn't be because my contacts in US are limited, but because of ITF, sometimes mission to seafarers we use. It is a very good network, and as you can see, InterManager is in a very good stand here to represent you. So Mark, it's last 2 minutes. Usually it is your last word. So
my
over
last
to you.
word. Well, thanks to Natalie and Philip, particularly to Natalie for her eloquent, informed, and friendly manner of delivery. I think this sort of presentation is exactly what we should be doing on these 2 weekly meetings as well, having a really interesting discussion and debate on key issues. So that's fantastic. We've got a bit of work to do on the committee now for our standard. So Kuba and I will get our heads together over the Easter period and get out some directions and hopefully finalize a committee which can be added to or taken away as we go along. It's a moving feast, and we will keep working, all of us, myself included, on members. Let's keep the membership drive up. One more thing, we did agree with SMI that we would be producing a quarterly in the SMI magazine, particularly focused on InterManager and our membership, full and associate. So we'll come out with some more details on that too. But last but not least, a very happy Easter to you, to those of you who celebrate Easter, and I hope the Easter Bunny brings you everything you could possibly desire. So have a nice Easter break. Take care.
Very good. Thank you, guys. Stay tuned because I need to decide on the next meeting if I can get the Philippines government representatives in 2 weeks' time. I'm working towards that. It will be 14th of April. But stay tuned. There will be minutes of this meeting, sort of, yeah, recording and everything. And let me join Mark in wishing you all the best for Easter. It is 2 minutes ahead of the time. Ship managers always deliver. Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you.